beIN Sports ekranlarına hoş geldiniz değerli izleyiciler. Bugün İstanbul'da çok özel bir konuğumuz var. Atletik yazarı ve muhabiri David Ornstein ile birlikte Premier Ligi konuşmaya çalışacağız. Hey David, it's a big pleasure for me. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
I got too many things to ask for you, but I just wanted to start. How are you? Are you okay?
Yeah, good. It's nice to be in Istanbul for a start and at this great event. It's an amazing city, full of football and culture, and so this is a great time as well in the middle of an exciting season. Always busy for me with the Premier League and the transfer markets, but even in between the transfer markets, there's so much news happening all the time, and it's very exciting.
And we get used to get the true news from you for the years.
Well, that's the only way I know, is to try and report the news accurately. If you can be first, fantastic.
Yeah.
The most important thing is to get it right, whether it be transfers, managerial changes, injuries, and I think in this industry now, the audiences and the football fans, they want information so much, but they want the correct information, and I just try my best to provide it.
And I know it's not an easy path. You've done a lot of things, and there are some rumors that you follow Alan Shearer on the golf course in the website.
Well, that was many years ago, when I was a young child growing up as a football fan, and I lived close to where the England team trained before matches at Wembley, and then they would relax on the golf course, and me and my friends, we would trespass. We would go inside the golf course and ask the players, would you like us to carry your bag? And they would say, okay, like a 14-year-old boy, no problem. And so carried the bags around the course for Robbie Fowler once,
wow.
Alan Shearer, and at the end they just sort of say, here's a £20 note and go on your way. And those were memories that I cherish, because it allowed me to meet the heroes of football and increased my appetite to work in the industry. And then many years later, I would be a colleague of Alan Shearer at the BBC, and then at The Athletic, where I work now. He's a columnist for us. And it is all part of my football journey, and we all have our own stories to tell. Yeah,
it's a really good path, and I'm also admire you on my career. And I want to start with the Brighton phase in that interview. You know that our latest export, Ferdi Kadıoğlu, he had a really great European Championship, and now he's a Brighton player. He scored against Liverpool at Anfield. I think it's a dream for him, and he started really well, and he's getting used to the tempo of the Premier League. What do you think about his performance and also about his future?
Well, firstly, this is a player who has been talked about for a long time. He's been heavily linked with many clubs because he was doing so well for Fenerbahce, over 200 appearances. He was doing well for the Turkey national team. Of course, he was born in the Netherlands, so it's a bit of a different route that he's taken. But he caught the eye of the scouts and the recruitment experts in the biggest leagues in Europe, and that included the Premier League. So you saw rumours of Arsenal all the time that he was going to sign for them. I never knew how credible those rumours were, but definitely people were studying him very seriously. And it didn't surprise me that despite some of the biggest names in world football being linked with him, it was Brighton who came in, because they've got one of the best recruitment setups in world football. And that is shown in their track record of who they've signed in the last few years. And credit to Tony Bloom, the owner, and Paul Barber, the chief executive, now David Weir, the sporting director, and their recruitment setup. Ferdi was a significant amount of money, £25 million plus add-ons, which shows how seriously they took it. Now Brighton will always hope to make a profit on a player in the future, and so it's not like they were signing him for 5 million like Caicedo. This is a big outlay because they wanted him to help them succeed in the Premier League and maybe in Europe as well. He settled in very easily. He showed in the major competitions for Turkey that he can adapt and play in different positions. So he was more left back in the last tournament, but he has also played right back and right winger, not just wing back. And Brighton have predominantly used him on that sort of right wing back position and accentuating his attacking capabilities as much as anything. And we really saw that at Anfield, one of the biggest stages in world football. But that was symptomatic of the performances we've seen from him entirely throughout the season so far and prior in his career. It was a disappointment that he didn't get to play in the most recent match against Manchester City, because that is one of the most iconic results in Brighton's history, and he had this small injury. But he will be back after the international break, and we'll continue to see him hopefully flourish. Now, your question about the future, who knows? Brighton are a club who like to maximise the players they've got at their disposal. They like to, first and foremost, extract their football potential, and then in time build their value. And if the moment comes where there is interest from other clubs and that player feels it's the right opportunity for him and Brighton feel it's the right opportunity for them, then they would look to do a sale. He's on a long contract, so I don't think that's anytime soon. But it would not surprise you if some of the even bigger clubs or bigger names in world football, because with total respect to Brighton, they're becoming a big club with their own ambitions. But it's the nature of the transfer market that when a player is progressing as well at 24 years old, he's coming towards the peak years of his career, then we might see another move at some point. But I don't think Brighton want that to be anytime soon.
And also he's working with a really young manager like Fabian Hürzeler. He's the youngest one in the Premier League now, and maybe it could be a chance for Ferdi as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Fabian Hürzeler is a remarkable guy. He's the youngest we've ever seen in the Premier League. He manages like he's one of the oldest, with maturity, like he's got years of experience. He's much younger than me, so it's quite terrifying, really. But he has made an immediate impact. He's got some big victories. He is showing his personality, his style of football, and he's living up to the reputation he was building in Germany as being one of the most exciting up-and-coming managers, coaches in world football. He's managing guys who are older than him, which is really rare. Danny Welbeck, James Milner and others. But he doesn't seem to be fazed by it at all. And this is somebody that also, without meaning to sell him from Brighton, other clubs will be looking at and saying, wow, this guy is really something. So for someone like Ferdi, he's got a great opportunity to develop under and with this coach now, maybe even in the future. And it's a remarkable project that's going on at the Amex Stadium, and long may it continue.
Yeah, we will be looking forward what they're going to do with Brighton, Ferdi and Hürzeler. Yeah. But I want to move on with the newest manager in the Premier League, Ruben Amorim. It was a long era with Erik ten Hag, but now they part their ways with Erik ten Hag and Ruben Amorim. I think today he's taken the office. And what do you think about Ruben Amorim's future in Manchester United? There are too many rumors before him, and in the summer transfer market he was in talks with another clubs, and now he is with the Manchester United with an exit fee. It was a big amount of money, and you know that he hasn't got any Premier League experience before, and it's going to be a little bit harsh, I think, to get used to it. What do you think about the board members of Manchester United? Are they going to give the comfort to Ruben Amorim?
This is huge development in the Premier League, and as we speak now, he is on his first day at Manchester United at Carrington, the training ground, but he can't do the coaching yet because he's waiting for a work permit. That's a normal process with players and coaching staff from overseas, and anyway, it's an international break, so many of the Manchester United players aren't there. When they come back from their national team, then he will have his work permit, I'm sure, and it will be normal business. So today will be about meetings and familiarising himself with the club and the people and this new country that he's working in for the first time. He does know Manchester United a little bit, because when he was training to become a coach, he did an internship at Carrington with Jose Mourinho. I think it was 2017, perhaps. And this is another person who is being regarded as part of this new wave of young, 39 years old, the same as me, innovative, creative, ambitious managers, coaches who have a very clear vision on how they want to play football, and they are executing it at their clubs, and it's attracting some of the biggest teams in world football, the Premier League and others around Europe. So Ruben Amorim did a fantastic job. First real impact that got picked up by the wider audience was at Braga, and very quickly he was taken to Sporting, and then the story there has been sensational. That made many of the clubs that you mentioned look at him, and so Chelsea, I think, spoke to him maybe twice, certainly once, first to get a feel for what he was like, because they saw him being one for the future. This is around the time that they were moving from Thomas Tuchel to Graham Potter, and then maybe again when they moved from Graham Potter to Mauricio Pochettino. And they may even have considered him before they decided to go for Enzo Maresca now. Because people within the game, executives, owners, they speak to people, they listen, they watch, and they identify who the best talent is, whether it be players, staff, coaches, executives. And he was really starting to catch the eye. He's also been heavily linked with Liverpool after Jurgen Klopp decided to leave. And he would have been considered by Liverpool, but my information is never that they made a move to sign him. And of course they ended up going for Arne Slot, and it's working out very well. It was very well documented that he flew to England last summer and had a conversation with the hierarchy at West Ham United. It did not go so well. He decided that ultimately he wanted to stay at Sporting and do another season. I don't think it's that West Ham failed to land him. It was just his decision, and you are allowed to meet people and have conversations. And I quite like that, because he's his own man, he's a strong personality, and he knows what he wants to do. Eventually he gets his opportunity. Manchester United did speak to him last summer. It was not so well reported at the time, because the big conversation was around Thomas Tuchel and Roberto De Zerbi, and people were saying Gareth Southgate and all these different names. Thomas Frank, Marco Silva, Mauricio Pochettino, but they did have conversations, and they really liked Ruben Amorim. And we understand through our reporting that Omar Barada, the new chief executive at Manchester United, was very fond of him. And maybe that gives you an indication of what Manchester City may have been thinking about him, because Omar Barada only in the last year has moved across from Man City to Manchester United. Now, the recruitment process in the summer was a bit of a mess at Manchester United, because they spoke to people, but they ended up sticking with Erik ten Hag. But crucially, they had done that work. So when it came to the pressure on Erik ten Hag recently, the groundwork had already been done. They didn't need to do interviews. They just needed to decide who their target was, if they were going to make a change, and go and get him. So very impressively, by Sir Jim Ratcliffe as owner, Sir Dave Brailsford as head of sport for Ineos, Barada as chief executive, Dan Ashworth as sporting director, Jason Wilcox as technical director, a number of different people there at Manchester United. They decided that Ruben Amorim was the man for them. And I broke the news shortly after revealing that Erik ten Hag had been sacked, that Manchester United were working on a deal to appoint Amorim. And it emerges that Barada had gone over to Lisbon to hold face-to-face talks with Sporting, and also Amorim. They had Amorim's commitment. he wanted to come and take on this project, but they needed to strike a deal. There was a 10 million euros release clause. You don't pay that sort of money if you're not convinced by somebody. They actually went a little bit higher, 11 million euros, to make sure he could leave early, because otherwise Sporting could have held him for up to 30 days. And so he had the opportunity to coach for 3 or 4 more matches. It left Ruud van Nistelrooy in temporary charge. Some people were saying, could Ruud van Nistelrooy get the job permanently? Manchester United have tried this before with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Yes, the results and performances were better, but they were absolutely convinced that Ruben Amorim could be one of the best coaches in the world very soon and into the future. And so they thought this was their time. When new owners come into clubs or new investors, they often want their own man. With all due respect to Erik ten Hag, who did a very good job over 2.5 years, he's secured 2 trophies. He tried very hard in very difficult circumstances on and off the pitch with so many complicating factors. But ultimately, they wanted to have their own person. They've decided that's Amorim. And the likes of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Sir Dave Brailsford, they believe their project starts now, that this is the real beginning, that they've made so many changes of executives and players, but the one thing they hadn't changed was the manager. They've now got a new head coach, and they're going to look to go forward and build positively, identify a proper style of football, which they haven't really had strongly, or they've gone in different directions since Ferguson left. And they will hope bring Manchester United back towards the level that they believe they belong at from the history, which is competing for the Premier League, for the Champions League, for the domestic cups, and playing great football. It's going to be a huge challenge. They've got a long way to go. There's going to be some ups and downs and bumps in the road. But in Amorim, they feel finally that they have got somebody that is going to be the level that they expect. And we've seen his style of play at Sporting. We've seen his personality, his characteristics, his charisma, his communication in the press conference and the media. The one thing I would say is just be cautious for now, because many people said similar things about Erik ten Hag. Plays good football, part of a new wave of coaches, and ultimately it's over for him. And you will only be as good as the structure around you at a club and as good as the recruitment that happens at a club. If they can get the structure and the recruitment right at Manchester United now, it will give a good coach in Amorim, like Erik ten Hag was a good coach, a better chance of success in the long term.
Yeah, of course, it won't be an easy task for Ruben Amorim. And I have to say that you are not looking like 39. Ruben Amorim is looking a bit older than you. That's huge. That's a huge difference between you. And you mentioned about Jose Mourinho. He's working in Istanbul and he's with Fenerbahce nowadays. He's got a big victory yesterday with 4-0 to Sivasspor. And there are some rumors in the British media that Newcastle United wants him and they are nearly close to part their ways with Eddie Howe. I don't know, do you have any information? But I don't think so. But what you gonna say about that?
Firstly, it was a good victory for Jose Mourinho. Sofian Amrabat was among the goal scorers, who of course is a former Manchester United player and a signing of Erik ten Hag. That story that came up was not the first time Jose Mourinho has been linked with Newcastle United since the new ownership, led by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, came into St James's Park. If you look back, there have been rumours in previous months. And so clearly it appears to be a job that he would like, according to these reports. I don't have information on that myself. But it doesn't matter what he might like or not. Many people would like the Newcastle United job, but the Newcastle United job is not available, and it doesn't appear to be becoming available anytime soon. Eddie Howe has done a fantastic job since he was appointed a couple of years ago. He led Newcastle to the Champions League. They didn't manage to qualify for a second season, but this is a club who were fighting against relegation under the previous ownership, and they've transformed their recruitment. And it's not been easy. They've spent a lot of money. They have encountered problems with financial fair play, profitability and sustainability, which is all we seem to talk about in the Premier League these days and in Europe. They've lost their European place. So it's not been perfect. And this season started well for Newcastle, but then it started to stutter. And there was speculation around Eddie Howe. Would he be in the frame for the England job after Gareth Southgate left? Does he want to be at Newcastle under the new sporting director, Paul Mitchell, who has a strong reputation in his own right, but they had not worked together before. So it often takes time to gel, and in normal circumstances, in a continental model, the sporting director will come before the head coach. They will pick the head coach, and maybe one day they will sack the head coach or find a new head coach. But in this case, the manager, Eddie Howe, was there before the sporting director, which is a backwards way of doing things, but there was nothing that could be done about it because Eddie Howe was there and he was doing a good job, and Dan Ashworth left for Manchester United. That's the context at which these stories have developed. But I speak to you today, less than 24 hours on from Newcastle producing their best performance, I would say, of the season so far, coming from behind at Nottingham Forest, who were in the top 4 of the Premier League at the start of the weekend, and they were playing great football under Nuno Espirito Santo, and people are talking about them. Could they do what Leicester City did in 2016? Could they cause a surprise and get into Europe? And Newcastle turned it around with a really impressive performance. Not many teams go to the City ground and win like that. And so from what I can see and what I hear, the Newcastle job is Eddie Howe's for the foreseeable future. I have no information to suggest Newcastle are looking to make a change. To the contrary, I think they don't want to make a change. They want to continue, build, improve, and try to succeed with Eddie Howe. And so whether or not Jose Mourinho is interested, which these reports suggested, I think he's doing a good job at Fenerbahce, and also, there will be many people interested in him if he's available, as we've seen in his career until this day, in Premier League, in Italy, in Spain, in Turkey, even at international level. So, no, I can't give you the big exclusive that Jose Mourinho is moving to Newcastle. Maybe it will happen one day, but not for now.
Yeah, thank you. For now, it's really good to clear the things up for the Fenerbahce fans. And finally, I want to ask you about the Premier League title race this season. Can Arne Slot make it in his first year? And City are having some problems on the absence in the Rodri, and also in Mikel Arteta's side, Arsenal. They are not winning in consecutive in 4 games, and also there's an exit about Edu Gaspar, and you mentioned that he's going to work with Evangelos Marinakis, I think, in the next years, and it will be a huge step up for him. And what do you think about the title race and Arne Slot?
Arne Slot is doing a magnificent job at Liverpool. There was all this speculation that Liverpool wanted to appoint Xabi Alonso, and I think many clubs would love to appoint Xabi Alonso based on the work he's done at Bayer Leverkusen. An incredible season. But the truth behind the scenes was quite different from the public exterior, which is all saying Xabi Alonso is number 1, he's going to be the Liverpool head coach, manager, when actually I don't think it was something that he was looking to do at this moment in his career. And I think Liverpool knew that from quite early. So they identified Slot in a proper recruitment process that was led by Richard Hughes, the new sporting director, overseen by Michael Edwards, who was the former sporting director and is now the chief executive for football at Fenway Sports Group, the ownership. It is proving to be a very shrewd appointment of a guy who is a good coach, first and foremost, is a good man manager, and has a great personality. Nice smile. The fans are learning to love him after Jurgen Klopp. They didn't do much in the transfer market. They missed out on their top target, Martin Zubimendi of Real Sociedad, yet they had an amazing start to the season in results, if not necessarily performances. Then came the first international break and they had a wobble afterwards because they lost at home to Nottingham Forest. But from that moment on, they have not looked back in the Premier League and in the Champions League. So far, so good. They've built a strong lead at the top of the Premier League table, but they've got Manchester City on the horizon, and that could see the points change. I think it's at Anfield. So they're not going to be getting carried away at Liverpool. at the moment their performances are not at the level where they would like them to be. They're playing quite heavily on the counter-attack. Some of their first half displays are not as strong as the second half, so that they will want to see significant improvement. However, I believe they're in the title race firmly. I believe they can win the Premier League title, no doubt. Will they win it? I don't know. But I think credit does need to go to Arne Slot, Richard Hughes as sporting director, and the hierarchy at the club. Now, when I say that, many Liverpool supporters get angry because they feel they should have done more in the transfer market last summer. Let's see what they do, if they do anything in January and next summer. But they've got a very strong squad of senior players. They've got a lot of good young players coming through. They do need to sort out the contract situations of Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold, arguably the most important because of his age profile. And so there is pressure on the hierarchy, but what we are seeing on the pitch is worthy of recognition. Manchester City, despite having an unprecedented slump in 4 consecutive defeats, it is mind-blowing. They're still within touching distance of Liverpool, 5 points behind, I think it is. And so, firstly, they often start the season quite slowly. They had a better start to the season than they normally do, but now they've hit this little wobble. What we've seen from City year after year is that they come strong in the second half of the season and really strong when it matters most, in the final weeks and months of the campaign, when they have been there, they've done it, they've got the experience and they've got the quality. They could also recruit if they wanted in the January transfer window. So never write off Manchester City and never write off Pep Guardiola. He is, by common consensus, the best coach in world football, and he seems to be more hungry the more trouble he's encountering. These results inspire him, by the looks of it, to get it right and turn it around. They've had a lot of injury problems that have really affected them. There is uncertainty about his future because he's out of contract next summer, and we still have no concrete news on whether he's going to extend or not. The feeling is that he will most likely extend by 1 year, but that is not confirmed yet. And until it's confirmed one way or the other, there is speculation. Their sporting director, Chiki Begiristain, one of the best in the business, he's leaving next summer. And I broke that story. We also mentioned within that Hugo Viana is coming from Sporting, also to Manchester, the Portuguese takeover of Manchester. And he will be integrated, there will be a transition period. So then there's the 115 charges that hang over Manchester City, the Premier League case. They're also fighting the Premier League on associated party transactions, which means that there is so much going on at Manchester City right now. But I believe they will be in contention for the major trophies come the end of the season. Arsenal is very interesting because they challenged Manchester City 2 years in a row. The third year is when you suspect, after missing out twice, they will go that one step further. In their mind, that would have been their ambition. But it's not been a good period, and it's not helped by the departure of Edu Gaspar as sporting director. Very inconvenient timing to lose such a key, integral person in November when there is so much going on in the Premier League, in the Champions League. You've got transfer windows to prepare for, but he clearly felt he had an opportunity that he could not turn down. We think there's an agreement in place with the Marinakis group of clubs, which is Nottingham Forest, Olympiacos and Rio Ave, to take a senior position that has not yet been confirmed, and no contracts have been signed to my knowledge. But they see him coming in and building out a multi-club model, which he cannot do at Arsenal at the moment because there is no multi-club strategy there. And I'm sure the money, the financial side is important, but there are other factors in his mind too. It's left Arsenal without a sporting director. Jason Ato, his assistant, is stepping up on an interim basis. There are other great people there, today, as I speak to you, James King starts as football operations director. He comes from the Professional Footballers Association, the PFA in England. He used to work at Arsenal. He's a lawyer by trade, and so that's said to be a strong appointment. They have a head of recruitment in James Ellis. They have the managing director, who used to be the director of football operations, in Richard Garlick. They have Tim Lewis, who's the director, increasingly influential. The Cronkies as owners. They've got others like Per Mertesacker running the academy, who has been looked at by many in Germany in particular to become a technical director. So there are qualities in the building that give Arsenal hope that they're going to have a bright future. They are embarking upon a recruitment process to appoint a new sporting director. That may take some time. People are in jobs, they have notice periods, they want to find the right person for them, maybe that has the same or similar charisma to Edu and experience and contacts book. It is not ideal timing for Arsenal when they're trying to win matches. What we saw at Chelsea on Sunday was a much improved performance. They got a goal because it's been a couple of games where they've not really posed much threat.
Without Martin Odegaard.
Without Martin Odegaard, but now he's back. Declan Rice was carrying an injury, but he's playing, and he's playing well. And so they will have the confidence that after the international break, if they can get their squad fit again, then they have a run of fixtures that present some opportunities to make up ground on Liverpool, Manchester City, and in that title race. Again, we should not dismiss them from that race, but there is very little margin for error now for Arsenal. And when you look at their squad, perhaps they might look for opportunities to invest, because the last few weeks have shown us that underneath there is perhaps not as much depth as they would like to think. So those are 3 clubs. I don't know if you asked me any more.
No, actually, thanks for your time, David. It's a good pleasure, and it's a big pleasure to me to talk to you about the Premier League, and thank you for everything. Thank you for everything, man.